All right, and welcome everyone to this Thursday Releaders Plus event with Andy Alsop, the founder and CEO of The Receptionist. I'm your host, Kevin Edwards, present here at Real Leaders. And today, folks, we'll be talking about employee supremacy. Employee supremacy, what does that mean to everybody here on this call? What does that mean to you as a leader, as a future leader, trying to make sure that you're not just focusing on what people, what society, what the business books are telling you to maximize for, but you're maximizing for not just shareholder value, but also for your employees. So today we'll cover all that with someone who is actually doing it at the receptionist, Mr. Andy Alsop. Andy, before we get going, my man, we got Annette Mason here on the call. Annette, you are our one guest here today. Again, I got 20 RSVPs. No one's here, but here's what we're going to do, guys. We're going to make the most of the next 30 minutes of this session. Andy's going to present, and we're going to record it, so we're going to stream it live. And then what we're going to do, we're going to circle back probably in another month, make sure we can really target this event and drive as many people to this call as much as possible. So let's give it our all for those who will be watching on LinkedIn afterward as well, and we'll go from there. Andy, we'll pass to you.
All right. Well, thank you. Can you hear me all right? All right. So I'm actually just going to share my screen and give everybody an opportunity to see that. Annette, how are you today?
Good. Great to see you today, and I'm excited about the topic.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. So I'll just go through. I've made this presentation to a lot of people before, but I'm just going to start out with what a definition of employee supremacy is, just to kind of give everybody an idea of what it's all about. And then I am going to introduce myself a little bit. So employee supremacy is a smack you in the face philosophy that is in contrast to shareholder supremacy. So I call it it's a leadership decision-making model, and that prioritizes the greater good of a company so that it can fulfill its mission to focus on the company's employees and the community that surrounds it. So that's the definition I have shared with my employees, and it is what drives us. So the philosophy is if you focus on your employees, your customers will receive increased value. I saw a slide, Kevin, you put up, and I thought that was great. And there's more engaged, employees are more engaged, and the customers get more value out of the product and the services, which then means the shareholders get a strong return on their investment. It's kind of flipping the whole model on its head. You know, pretty much you're always seeing where the shareholders are always coming first. So it's intentionally, as I said, a smack you in the face definition of employee supremacy. And I do that for various reasons. One of which, there's a lot of different kind of employee models out there, like employee first and mission driven, social enterprises, cooperatives, that kind of thing. And a lot of those models can essentially just go away at the whim of the shareholders. And what my goal is to say, no, this isn't shareholder supremacy. This is employee supremacy. So before I go on, you're probably saying, who am I? I am the founder and CEO of The Receptionist. I am a lifetime entrepreneur. I always joke my first business was when I went and asked my mom for $100 to buy a lawn mowing machine. And then I took it, went and mowed a whole bunch of lawns. And by the end of the week, I paid her back. And that started my entrepreneurial life. So we're a Denver-based visitor management system. And what does that mean? When you walk into an office, you'll see an iPad there and you'll check in on the iPad. And then the iPad does a lot of the work that a receptionist might do. And that's why we're called the receptionist. In 3 weeks, we celebrate our 10th anniversary. And for much of that time, we've been running under employee supremacy. And I count that as the reason why we've had the success that we've had. So going back to it, it's a contrast. Employee supremacy is a contrast against shareholder supremacy. Under shareholder supremacy, the leadership team prioritizes what's in the greater good of the company as it relates to shareholders. And that's it. That is, under shareholder supremacy, that really is the definition. The leadership team has to do everything necessary to maximize the shareholder value. So, and employees, customers, and even the surrounding community don't have a position in the equation. It all started from a theory uh, by Milton Friedman. He wrote a book in 1962, Capitalism and Freedom, and then wrote an article called the Friedman Doctrine. And it is the social responsibility of business to increase its profits. There's a quote in there that when I studied this really got me, which it says, corporations have no higher purpose than maximizing profits for their shareholders. Corporations have no higher purpose than maximizing profits for their shareholders. Wow, that kind of explained why when I ran companies, and I've been part of companies who are running under shareholder supremacy, for me, that gave me a lot of anxiety. It really was not something that met what I wanted to do. So examples of this, the Elliott Investment Group, I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're behind what's happening at Southwest Airlines right now. The CEO, Bob Jordan, is basically has had his job threatened by Elliott Investment because they've bought a large block of shares to manipulate the stock price, to make these changes which temporarily bring up the stock price. And then as the stock price goes up, they're selling out. And what they generally do is sell out and don't hold a position in a company. That's just manipulation of the stock. They've done it at Honeywell. They did it at Salesforce, and they do it to maximize shareholder value. But the customers don't win in that situation. Here's a company that's been running profitably for over 50 years, and all of a sudden, these changes are coming in to elevate the stock price. So that is the kind of example that I like to bring up. That is just kind of the worst of shareholder supremacy. So let me get to what I see as my goals for today's presentation. So what I want to do is outline what is employee supremacy. It is an evolving concept. So each time I present this to somebody, to either a person or to a group, I get additional ideas that help me elevate the idea of employee supremacy. And that's why I'm here today. I'd like to write a book about it at some point. I'd like to really get it out there as a model and not just something that the receptionist uses, but a model that other companies can use. So I want your feedback, and I have some very specific feedback I'd like today. And that is, one, I want to find out, what are my blind spots? When you hear this presentation, what are the things that you say to yourself, that doesn't quite make sense to me? The other part I want is, we're considering becoming a B Corp. This is a very important group that I wanted to present to because I know there are a lot of B Corps in the Real Leaders audience. And so I'm trying to determine, like, how can employee supremacy and a B Corp work together? So those are two of the things I'd like to see happen. Now, I always like the origin story behind why something happens. I actually had an investor that I thought asked a really interesting question. It was just last week who I was talking to. And he said, every entrepreneur I talk to has an origin story. It might be their grandfather did something that really impacted them, or their father, or their mother, or their family, or somebody outside. But there is something that drives entrepreneurs to do what they do. And what is that? So I always like to go back to the origin story. I actually told him my origin story, and he's like, yep, see, there it is again. So it started with an interview of Simon Sinek by Inc. magazine. And I was listening to it, actually, it's a podcast. I'm listening to it on my walk with my pal Stella, a 100-pound Mastiff, and walking around, and I'm just hearing what he's talking about. And then I read The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. And it was really impactful for me because there were some central themes that were part of the Infinite Game, and those central themes really helped me kind of understand, why is it I have this strong sense about putting employees first. So the 5 elements are: 1, courage to lead. And that means making tough decisions that align with an organization's just cause. even if it means sacrificing immediate profits or pleasing stakeholders or shareholders in the short term. And then there's trusting teams. Trusting teams means you're building an environment where the team feels safe. And that was going pretty close to what I felt strongly about. Worthy rivals. So, rather than talking about competitors as like enemies to be defeated, but really looking as your rivals who push you to improve, that also helped me. And then existential flexibility. That really meant that the willingness to make significant strategic changes to align with the organization's just cause. And I put this last. If you know the infinite game, just cause comes first. I put it last. And the reason I put it last was I had those first four. But when I got to the just cause, I was like, what is our just cause? We don't really necessarily have something other than maybe we want to grow the receptionist to be, a big business or have lots of customers or to get rich or whatever. There was nothing that really came down and really made me feel like I had something strong. Well, it was on that walk and learning about this, Stella by my side, I came up with a concept of employee supremacy. It matched what my kind of origin story was of who I was and the experiences I had, along with something that I felt really strongly about and could take forward. And I felt like, okay, the infinite game, I feel like we're now playing in the infinite game. So the just cause is to build a world where a company's profits fuel the mission to be in service to its employees and the community. So I always like to repeat that. So it's to build a world, not just to build the receptionist, it's to build a world where a company's profits fuel the mission to be in service to its employees and the community. So why did I come up with that? Well, my career and my education had always talked about it, even in business school. Milton Friedman's theory was discussed. Shareholder supremacy, that's what you need to be focusing on at all times. That is your kind of North Star. And then some of the things that happened in my career, not only in my education, played that out. I was part of a company where the person running the company, they would say things like, well, we can't trust the employees with this information if things weren't going well. And we need to get every ounce out of every one of our employees. And we need to reduce, their pay and give them as little benefits as possible because we've got to deliver for the shareholders. And it literally put me into anxiety. It didn't feel like I was aligned with the people who were doing the work, the people who were talking to the customers, the people who are building the product. And so basically all of that compounded into this model of employee supremacy. So here's my vision. This is where I'm trying to go to, and this is where I'm hoping you can help me as well. It starts with the receptionist. It starts with where we are. We've been doing this for about 3.5 years. We have an incredibly engaged team. We have employees that have been with us up to 6, 7 years. We have employees that love what we have so much and talk to other people about it. Like, you wouldn't believe the company I work for, and we're growing, we're profitable, our customers are happy. And so I want to hone the model. I want to take what we've learned and hone it and develop it into a system. I don't know if you've heard, of the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS. It's what we run under. And it's a great model. And it's kind of like what I say is the nuts and bolts of running a business. If your VTO or the vision traction organizer, you have rocks. You have accountability charts to know exactly who's doing what. And it is an excellent model. It's really helped us a lot. But I believe that companies can run under employee supremacy, and it can run alongside any one of these operating systems, because the operating system is kind of like the engine of the car. Employee supremacy is the leadership decision-making model that prioritizes and kind of guides the car where it's going and what decisions you need to make. So I see them really working well together. So the question I've always had is, I've been asked, like, how do these two models, employee supremacy and shareholder supremacy, how do they actually differ? What sets them apart? So I think it's pretty easy. In shareholder supremacy, there is one stakeholder. And a lot of people can't believe this is actually true, but there's one stakeholder, shareholders. The customers and the employees are actually not part of the equation. And you see this actually, I mean, the Southwest Airlines example, I've heard a lot of reports, there's a lot of public articles about how the employees are so passionate about this new solution they're going to. Well, I've actually talked to people at Southwest Airlines, because I do fly Southwest Airlines. That's not actually true. They don't see these changes as being good. The customers aren't necessarily going to love it either. They're now going to have to pay for their bags. They're not going to have the same seating arrangement as they did and the things they were used to as a customer. So there really is no portion in the equation for employees and customers. And that's the part that really bothered me. It has bothered me for my whole career. So then let's talk about employee supremacy. I don't call it a hierarchy. I can call it more kind of a continuum. And that it really, the philosophy is very simple. You focus on your employees, which then means the customers get a great experience. And one of the things that we get is our referral rate in terms of the number of customers that refer us is amazing. When we do customer interviews, they're saying, we always talk about you. When people walk through the door, we talk about your software and the service because it's so great to work with your company. Well, guess what? Shareholders are happy because the company is growing. But it's not by saying, okay, we've got to deliver a value for the shareholders. It's more about let's focus on the people who do the work. And then in the end, the customers are going to be happy. And then finally, the shareholders are going to be happy. So is this saying that shareholders are bad? Absolutely not. Not at all. I'm the biggest shareholder in my company, and I'm not saying that I'm bad. What I say is that shareholders just shouldn't be the primary audience that you're focused on. It's that we want to deliver a return to the shareholders, but it really means that that needs to be done by focusing on the people who are doing the work day to day, that are answering the customer calls, that are selling to the customers, that are building the product, that kind of thing. So there are some unintended positive outcomes of the employee supremacy model. One is retention. I talked about that. We have an amazing retention in terms of employees who have stayed with us. It actually gets to the point, and I'll just be honest, that sometimes employees have to be exited. You know, it's just it's a part of growing a company, and we don't have employees that we have to hide. You'll see this before where companies don't want to advertise anything about other employees because they could get poached. We actually put a picture, their email address, and their LinkedIn profile right on our website. You can go and see every employee. And the employees come to me constantly. They come to their managers and they say, I am always getting recruited, but I am going to stay here because I believe what we're doing here. I believe in the just cause. And I believe in the quality of life that I get from working for this company under employee supremacy. So let's go on. So what is it, and this is a really impactful one, because again, as I said, I'm evolving this model, and within the company, it kind of felt as though, some things maybe weren't being interpreted the way I was hoping for them to be interpreted. So I said to myself, okay, let's talk about what it is and what it isn't. So what it is a leadership decision-making model, and it prioritizes the employee in the decision-making process. So our leadership meetings are focused on making sure we're always doing what's in the interest of the employees, because we know that benefits the customers, which benefits the shareholders. It has to be for the greater good of the company. If we don't operate in the greater good of the company, we actually begin to risk everyone's livelihoods. That is a really important core principle. And then focus on employees. The well-being of the employees is the central focus of the leadership team, in addition to growing and everything else, but we know that's where it starts. And then cultural alignment. We are grounded in our core values. Our core values are fabric, fun, authentic, bold, respectful, innovative, collaborative. Everybody in the company knows them. Through the EOS system, the entrepreneurial operating system, we're constantly reinforcing our core values. We have we have actually channels within our Slack communication system where we're continually giving points for people who have shown one or more of the values in something. It's a beautiful way to really ground in those company values. Growth is necessary. Growth and or profitability are required for the sustainability of the whole. It's a key element of it. Accountability requires that all the members of the team be accountable for their contributions and behavior. This has also been a really important element. And we also reinforce this through EOS and our business model as well. Strategic advantage. We recognize that engaged and supported employees drive success. We see it every single day when we're talking to customers. We have our software running at about almost 7,500 locations in all over the world. And so we have a lot of customer feedback, and the feedback we get really supports how important this model is. What it isn't, it's not a democracy. So the leadership team retains responsibility for company decisions and direction, focusing on what is in the greater good of the company, and that then reinforces employee supremacy. It's not a guarantee of employment. I actually had to add this one to it because it's not necessarily that everybody that gets to work for the receptionist. They have to deliver on the needs of the company and the needs of the customers so that we can continue to fulfill our mission. And then not everything is shared. This has been an interesting one as well. The idea of employee supremacy was, do we get access to all the information? There are things that have to be held confidential in a company. And I put that out there, part of the A in fabric is authentic. I'm just being authentic about the fact that, there are some leadership decisions that can't be shared. It might be personnel decisions, or it might be things that have happened that just aren't going to be shared with the rest of the group. All right. So examples of employee supremacy in action, and this is at the receptionist. This past quarter, we have these rocks. It's part of EOS, and it means every person has 1 to 3 or more rocks. And those are things that you're held accountable to being done. You choose what your rocks are. We say as a company, these are the rocks that we need to focus on. Well, one of the focuses we had for the fourth quarter was we wanted to focus on our culture and our employees. So every member of leadership took one rock that was focused on culture and employees. One of the things that we did out of that was something called a listening tour, where we spent time going around to each group within the company, within each team, and listening to them, finding out what was working, what's not working. And we got a lot of great information, and we've already impacted in Q1 a lot of the changes that we heard. So the employees are feeling like, okay, I hear, I'm saying this is what I say should change. And then action is seen in response to that. In past quarters, we put together a vacation travel fund. A lot of employees don't have enough money to go and travel, so we give them an amount of money so that they can go travel when they take their vacation. We implemented something a long time ago called Fabric Fridays. That is where every employee gets every other Friday off. You wouldn't believe how important this is to employees. I hear things like, instead of having to kind of lie about what I'm doing because I got to get an oil change for my car, or I need to do all those things, now I have a day in the week I can get stuff done, or it means I can extend my weekend and I have a 3-day weekend. It's one of the most valued programs that we have. We have best-in-class benefits, mental health stipend, professional development fund, 4 months of paid leave for birthing parents. It's really been important but it's not all about just what are the benefits. It's about how you treat your employees. So, you know, I always talk about this. When you get a new car, or maybe you rent a car, and all of a sudden you're driving around, and for some reason you start noticing, wow, there's a lot of these cars on the road, right? Just because you've been, you're in that car or whatever. I think this is where, under this philosophy, if I've done what I hope to do, I think you'll see examples out there in the wild of companies doing really great things that are examples of what I like to call employee supremacy. So I always say, send them to me if you see them. I'd love to get more and more of these examples. Just for the examples I like, Richard Branson. These are some quotes. Obviously, the founder of Virgin Group. He said, put your staff first, customers second, and shareholders third. And I was like, yep, that's it. Danny Meyer, CEO of Shake Shack. He said, there are five stakeholders. You get to pick the order as the CEO. And he said, I picked employees, guests, or customers, the community, suppliers, and investors. So you saw shareholders are at the end of that line. Again, not that shareholders are bad, but it's just who are you focusing on? Hamdi Ulikaya, he's the CEO of Chobani Yogurt. Just a great story if you haven't studied that one. I think it's amazing. The new way of business, it's your employees you take care of first, not the profits. And you might see, I don't know if you noticed, my name is Alsop. I put down Joe Alsop. My brother started Progress Software and grew it to a $3 billion market cap and did really well. I didn't know that he would said this until after I came into really understanding what I thought was employee supremacy. But I saw an interview he had with the current CEO of Progress. He says, if the employees are motivated to do a good job, they will take care of the customers. And by the way, if the customers are happy, then the shareholders are happy. So, kind of without having spoken about it before in either of our careers, we actually ended up aligning on the same thing. A little bit of that origin story. So, what I want to do is I want to institutionalize employee supremacy. Philosophies like employee first. If you saw what happened with Mark Benioff and Salesforce, when their sales started to slow down, activist investors came in and said, you need to get rid of a whole bunch of stuff. You need to get rid of Salesforce Ranch, which was one of the perks that they had. And what that meant was it wasn't institutionalized. It meant that as much as Mark Benioff wanted to keep the benefits for his employees, an activist investor could come in and just say, no, you're not going to do that anymore. And I want to institutionalize it in the way that it can't be kind of just wiped away by investors and by shareholders. So some of the ways that I'm doing this right now and kind of learning is I've talked to a lot of investors. We don't have investors at this point. We've been a bootstrapped company, but we talk to investors, and that may become part of our strategy in the future. I make it clear to the investors in our initial discussions that we run on employee supremacy. Not all investors agree, but the ones that do are the ones that I say, okay, that's an investor that I can do business with. And I dig into it and find out what they're doing. Most of the time, they recognize, yeah, if you focus on your employees, you're going to drive much better outcomes at your company. As we bring on new team members, we make sure that they're aligned with employee supremacy. And you might say, well, of course they're going to be. There's some employees who come in and say, look, I want to work for a grow at all cost and do or die company. I don't want to be part of this employee supremacy, and that's totally fine. But we find that cultural alignment really quickly, and then develop processes and procedures to ensure employee supremacy remains central if the company grows, even after I, as the founder, is gone. That's what I'm working on. So what we're doing is I call it cultural embedding. Make employee supremacy a living part of the company's culture because, through regular reviews and feedback loops, we're constantly asking our employees. It becomes something that is so important to them. And what we're doing today, I talked about the listening tour. We do engagement surveys. I like to say I just take walks. A lot of times I'll just take walks with employees to just understand how they're feeling and what's going on. I've institutionalized it at the Receptionist. And now my question, and one of the questions, is how do I help other companies do the same? So, in conclusion, um, employee supremacy is not a new or a novel system. It's a rediscovery and an institutionalization of putting employees first. My call to action is to inspire excitement about the employee supremacy vision, encourage employees to become advocates of employee supremacy in and outside of the company. And the employees at our company have such a great experience that happens naturally. We get a lot of referrals of other employees coming in, employees referring employees, that kind of thing. All right. So my questions, um, and that is going to be, as I said, let me just restate what they are. What are the blind spots? What am I not thinking about? And then also, how can becoming a B Corp impact what we're doing and help tie together with employee supremacy? So, Kevin, back to you.
Well said. Well, Andy, thank you so much for sharing this presentation.